It was specifically anti-Chinese sentiment that motivated American entrepreneurs to recruit Japanese laborers. Since Chinese laborers were no longer available, the United States looked to Japan. And in 1885, the first Japanese workers are going to arrive in what is known as the independent kingdom of Hawaii. Most Japanese immigrants wanted to reside in America permanently. So the Japanese, unlike the Chinese, unlike the Filipino, came in family groups as compared to those Chinese and Filipinos who were primarily young male immigrants. In fact, many Japanese willingly assimilated into American society by adopting social norms and clothing styles. Many joined Methodist and Presbyterian churches to show America that they would assimilate. And as the Japanese population in California grew, they were increasingly seen with suspicion. And by 1905, anti-Japanese rhetoric filled the pages of the San Francisco Chronicle. In 1905, a group called the Japanese and Korean Exclusion League was established in response to their increasing presence. The Japanese and Korean Exclusion League felt threatened, and they established 4 policies in 1905 that they soon began to publicize. The policy was the extension of the Chinese Exclusion Act to include Japanese and Koreans. The exclusion by league members of Japanese employees, and the hiring of firms that employ Japanese. The initiation of pressure on school board to segregate Japanese from white children. And finally, an initiation of a propaganda campaign to inform Congress and the president of this quote-unquote menace. So this nativist sentiment, of course, is going to influence politicians and statesmen to act, and we will get what is known as the Gentleman's Agreement of 1907. And the Gentleman's Agreement of 1907 was an informal agreement between the United States and the Empire of Japan, whereby the U.S. would not impose restrictions on Japanese immigration or on students on the condition that the Japanese would not allow further immigration to the United States. That's why it was a gentleman's agreement. The goal was to reduce tensions between the two powerful Pacific nations who desired each other as trading partners. Now, the agreement, though never ratified by Congress, essentially ended with the passage of the National Origins Act of 1924, which banned all Asians. Now, the immediate cause of the agreement was the nativist anti-Japanese sentiment in California in general and San Francisco in specific. In 1906, the San Francisco chapter of the California Board of Education passed a regulation whereby children of Japanese descent would be required to attend racially segregated separate schools. And at the time, Japanese immigrants made up not even 1% of the population of California, but yet they were seen as a threat. Many of them had previously arrived under a special treaty in 1894, which had assured free immigration from Japan. And in the agreement, Japan was not to issue passports for Japanese citizens wishing to work in the continental United States, thus effectively eliminating new Japanese immigration to America. And furthermore, in Oxnard, California, Japanese and Mexicans formed a labor union specifically wanting to gain more human rights as a result of contractors abusing them and enslaving them. And they formed the Japanese-Mexican Labor Association. So, again, one of the things that's going to happen is that with regards to the Japanese, the United States is going to agree to accept the presence of Japanese immigrants already residing in America and to permit the immigration of wives, children, and parents so as to avoid legal discrimination against Japanese children in California schools.